find out that God's not too happy with what's going on around us.
Redeem the time, because the days are evil.
The Bible has not changed.
Boldly proclaim the restoration and preservation of Christian values in America.
Satan has brainwashed a whole nation.
As goes the church, so goes the nation.
Nobody's convicted of anything anymore.
And now, here's Last Call with your host, B.J. Edwards.
Go Bucks. I know you appreciate that. I know you appreciate that, Mr. Anderson. History will record the faces of public health expertise as some of the most sinful, egregious, epic failures in the history of public policy. They have killed people with their lack of understanding. The policy itself is a crime against humanity. Dr. Scott Atlas, coronavirus advisor to President Trump. Welcome to Last Call, folks. Hey, it's participatory radio. Love to have you call in 302-202-1110. Let me yak a little bit before you do that. 302-202-1110 and then 745-353. It's up there on the screen. Love to hear from you this morning. 2 hours of Christian talk radio with a sting. And we're going to kind of continue our discussion on prayer of last week, but also what is going on in America today. Oh my goodness. Part 2, truth and consequences of America's lack of faith and failure of leadership, first in the family, then the church, then government, and the rest of the institutions. Folks, we're going to stretch your mind today, so grab a cup of coffee, join us. Again, 302-202-1110. Hey, if you just want to listen in by phone, 605-475-0017 is one number, or 641-741-0816 is the other number you can reach us at. Every Saturday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern till noon. Special guest this morning. Wow. It's quite a spectacle. I don't know whether you watched the hearings this week. They weren't quite as bad as I thought they'd be, but it's quite a spectacle at the Senate hearings for Amy Coney Barrett's nomination to the Supreme Court. For example, this morning, as Judge Barrett calmly answered the committee's questions, she was also found cooking dinner for her family of 9 with her right hand and typing up an appellate court decision with her left hand. That's a great question, Senator. Thank you for asking. She responded to one of the line questionings as she chopped up onions to put in her stew. Sorry if I'm crying during my response. It's just the onions. She eloquently answered the inquiry while moving on to skinning the potatoes, simultaneously typing up a 50-page decision for the 7th Court of Appeals with her other hand. At publishing time, Judge Barrett had gotten out her knitting. I'm telling you, these are crazy times. Crazy times. Again, it wasn't quite as bad as I thought it was going to be, the hearings. It's not over with yet. Remember, the Dems are sore losers, so you can pretty much expect anything at this point.
Yeah, Nancy said she got more arrows.
Yes. Hey, how was your week? Were you a doer this week? By the way, I would recommend Coach Dave Dobmeyer's morning show. He's kind of like the Rush Limbaugh for Christians. It's okay to be a Christian.
Yeah.
He is, isn't he?
Yeah, he is.
Yep. If Rush is looking for a replacement, I'd recommend Coach at least once or twice a week. He gets me stimulated in terms of the Bible and the Word and what to do with it. It's the same thing that Rush Limbaugh. Rush Limbaugh will bring it in such a manner that you take the ball and run with it. Regardless of what he says, you just take the ball and run with it. And I learned from Rush Limbaugh, it's okay to question authority. And I learned the same thing from Coach Dave Live. That's every morning at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Free promo for you there, Coach. But you do help me in terms of my dealings out there. This week you talked about something bearing witness to the truth, which I wish I would have had in my mind. I thought of when I talked to my neighbor this week. My neighbor doesn't believe in masks, doesn't believe they work. And he was talking about, he was at the bank the other day, and he was sitting down talking to one of the representatives at the bank, and halfway through the conversation, he recognized that he didn't have a mask on. So he asked the lady if she thought he should put a mask on. He doesn't believe in them. And she said, of course, yes, wear one. So he put the mask on and he wore it. And I told him that what he did makes my life miserable. When I go out and about, I'm generally the only person out there that's not wearing a mask. And there are people like he that are wearing masks to make other people good, but a fellow Christian who knows the same thing he does, the masks really don't work. CDC study, 85% people who have the COVID virus wore masks most of the time, or all the time. 5% who didn't. But I wish I would have had this, and this is something the coach gave me this week, is I wish I would have thought to say to my Christian neighbor, Jesus Christ came to earth to what? He came to earth to bear witness to the truth. Neighbor, when you wear that mask, are you bearing witness to the truth? Maybe you're bearing false witness to the truth? Speaking of neighbors, I had a very busy week, folks, very busy week. There's a neighborhood website, and it includes several neighborhoods, and I put an ad in there, and I was looking for a barber that wasn't going to require me to wear a mask. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. You thought I was a mass murderer. The responses that I got. Just incredible. By the way, I did get some responses, and I have been able to find a barber. Next week I'm probably going to run an ad for a doctor. That ought to be interesting. But anyway, one of the people who responded to me, again, social shaming. Shame on you. Oh, you got to have a mask. It's like the Pied Piper. Only the Pied Piper has a mask instead of a flute, and he's just bouncing along. You know, picture maybe an ex-vice president and his nominee for president or vice president. Just picture that, bouncing along with mask on, leading the folks. This is just nuts. Anyway, I get this message from one of my neighbors. Yeah, come on, man. From one of my neighbors saying, well, here's what you need to do. You just need to go to the internet and you need to find a YouTube on how to cut your own hair. I'll let that sink in. How to cut your own hair. And of course, I thought about that, and I responded back, yeah, I'd be glad to do that. Once I look at the YouTube and I learn what I'm doing, can I practice on you first, cutting your hair, before I cut my own? I could probably do dental work as well. Maybe be a heart surgeon. Well, anyway, they took down my post. Insane. Gavin Newsom, I want to get into a little bit of that and what he's doing out in California. I had a couple congressmen, like actually one congressman and one senator that I contacted this week. Like I said, I had a busy week. And the one senator, a couple weeks ago, I sent every Republican senator an email asking them not to hold the hearings because I was afraid of what it would do to the American people, further cauterize, further divide. And in that process, I did sign up for a couple senators' weekly reports. And I got two of those weekly reports this week. Actually, one from a senator and one from a representative. And I looked at that and I scratched my head and went, oh my goodness, it's no wonder we got the problems we got. It's no wonder. So I sent an email back to the good senator. This is West Virginia Senator Capito, and thanked her for a recent update and her kind words about the Supreme Court nominee. That being said, I noted to her that I couldn't help notice, while reading your email, a very strong visual message regarding wearing masks, which I found confusing and, to be honest with you, rather troubling. Troubling because I've read a number of studies from doctors and PPI specialists that not only say masks are quite ineffective, but actually question whether they work at all. And in some cases, there's studies that say they'd actually cause damage. Influenza, pneumonia. No, you don't want to read that. You don't want to read that. That'll upset you. The truth will upset you. I'm sorry. So just how effective are masks, I suggested? A recent CDC study reported that 80% of the people who always wear or frequently wear masks contracted COVID-19 virus anyway, as versus 4% of the folks that didn't. Say what? Early on in my COVID-19 information research for the program, if you're a regular listener, you know what I'm going to be talking about here, I started noticing a lot of inconsistencies, and as a result, have not worn a mask at all since the viral panic began. And by the way, folks, if you've been wearing a mask day after month after month, it's going to be very difficult for you not to wear that mask, to take it off. I get that. I understand that. But if we're right about the mask not being effective and the Pied Piper, the mask is a control device. And you should not submit to that. God knows what they're going to do to you. Biden says if he gets elected president, he's going to make it a national requirement. He can't do that constitutionally. It's up to the states. Even the states can't do that. They can quarantine individuals, but they have no right at all to quarantine a nation, to quarantine a state. Yeah, I know they're doing it anyway. Whatever. Anyway, back to my email. I started my investigation around late March, early April, time frame of this year, and I thought to compare the actual number of deaths with the seasonal flu as compared to COVID-19 as the weeks and months were to progress. So when I went to the CD site, I saw that the number of flu deaths from last year ranged from 26,000 to 52,000. And I went, what? What do you mean ranged? Don't they know? I further researched and found that they didn't know. That what they were looking at was merely an estimate based on limited information and scientific modeling. Any of that sound familiar? I then noticed other inconsistencies like mask on, mask off. Or it doesn't really matter whether you wear a mask or not, just be sure to keep the 6-foot distance. Then I started to hear about COVID-related deaths. Again, I'm writing to a senator. I have associates whose relatives passed away, likely from a deadly accident or cancer, yet the cause of death ended up being COVID. Then there's the inconsistency of application of preventive methods. The eyes, we don't have to wear goggles. You can get on a crowded airplane, but you can't attend church services. And if you do, God help you if you sing. The bottom line, Senator, is that our forefathers gave their all that we could enjoy the liberties and freedoms that we have today. Think about what the founders gave so we could have the liberties and freedoms we have today. Please think about that. This isn't inconsequential. They lost their fortunes, they lost their lives, they lost their families to give us the liberties and freedoms we have today, and we're squandering them on a mask? We so quickly gave up our rights and privileges for a capricious acting virus, which you really haven't defined yet. In the meantime, our suicide rate is up. Drug overdoses out of sight. Businesses prematurely closed, many forever. Americans are afraid of their neighbors, and my son is afraid to hug his mother, along with other sons and daughters, and afraid of their neighbors, and treat the rest of the family like they all had the plague. Enough is enough already. I'd love to see you try to insert, writing to the senator, some common sense and wisdom into this national embarrassment. Yes, I know people have died horrible deaths, and I get that. But seasonal flu brings the same sort of tragedy. That being said, the obvious question should be, comparing the flu to the COVID, why the panic now, just before a presidential election? Again, Senator, I pray that you help inject a little wisdom into this viral panic. America's smarter than this, and we all, especially our families and founders, gave their all, deserve better. Thank you for your consideration in advance. B.J. Edwards, National Director, Natural Family Foundation. So what do you think? What did you do this week? Who did you talk to? Did you talk to your neighbors, or are you afraid to talk to them? What did you do? B.J. Edwards, along with Mr. Anderson, your last call. We'll be back in a moment. Keep tuned in, because in about 15 minutes we're going to bring on Kurt Knock. We've had Kurt at the desk before, and we're going to talk about prayer and what he's doing and what we should be doing.
Last call with BJ Edwards. Real talk about real life.
Thing. You have to do family research to know what I'm talking about. I have cautioned you about Quora Digest, which you probably get every now and then. There are just so many journalistic and social media sources, Facebook, Twitter, for example, that are opposing Donald Trump. It's just hard to believe that he even registers at all above 10% on the support meter. Think about this. He who controls the information controls the world. If you get information on Donald Trump and you get it daily, it's all negative. The sore losers, the leftists, the liberals, the Democrats. Was it over 50% of the Democrats are going to vote for Biden? 50% of the Catholic Democrats are going to vote for Biden. I mentioned leadership earlier, but I digress. He who controls the information controls the world. And again, I mentioned Quora Digest to you before, and monitor them from time to time. I say monitor because they have taken me off their respond list. Here we go again, controlling the information. Which means when an article or an item is published, I don't have the opportunity to comment on it, like it or dislike it. So I present for your entertainment an example of questions posed by Quora Digest and a response from one of their qualified correspondents, who in this case is a former music teacher in Baltimore Public Schools, started in 1969, retired, who currently lives in California. The question posed by Quora: why is Chris Wallace against Donald Trump politically, given that he's a Fox News anchor? And by the way, folks, this is why we lose all the time. We compromise. We appoint the Chris Wallaces to represent us, who's already in the middle left. And which way do we expect him to move? So what was our expert's opinion? Chris Wallace, I hope you're sitting down. Chris Wallace is a true conservative rather than a Trump pseudo-conservative. He is so well respected that Fox News he's so well respected that Fox News cannot replace him. Trump put him in a terrible position at the debate, and he did, Mr. Wallace did, the best he could with someone who is out of control. Can you imagine every day hearing people badmouth you 24/7 and your quote-unquote friends don't defend you? How would you feel about that? How would you react to that? Our ex-music teacher then concludes that he thinks his father, Mike Wallace, would be proud, and Mike Wallace would be proud of him, which I can certainly agree with because, of course, Mike Wallace, as we all know, was renowned for his Republican and conservative stances. This is comedic, folks. The apple doesn't fall very far from the tree. And Chris Wallace is no more a conservative than his father. He just hides it better, thanks to Fox News. The problem here is Fox News and Christians who compromise with the truth in order to be seen as getting along. Remember the explanation I gave to you as how conservatives and liberals compromise? You have the far left and you have the far right. The far left says, if you start in the middle, we'll talk to you, which sounds reasonable. But the only problem is, by starting in the middle now becomes the right stance. So we have the middle as the right stance, not the far right. The middle is the right stance. And then we move only one way, right? To the left. That is how we've been working this, because we're nice people, because we're feeling and caring about everything but the truth. And this is especially true when it comes to leadership or lack thereof. Remember, as conservatives, we want more than anything else to be liked and never criticized. So as a courtesy, we start in the middle and work our way towards the left. That's not compromise, folks. That's conformity in its worst form. Where in God's name are the leaders in America? By the way, now you know why I'm banned quietly from being heard on platforms that I have impact on. The other congressman that I wrote to this week sent a weekly news report with absolutely no pictures of anyone with a mask on. Had pictures, but nobody with a mask on. I called up and I got a chuckle out of the receptionist there, or the assistant there. I said, I just want to call up and thank you for not wearing a mask. She just giggled and I giggled. I'm sorry, folks. You're going to have to prove to me that I have to wear a ball and chain before I wear a ball and chain. You're smarter than this, folks. You are smarter than this. And like I said, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult to turn that around. But it can be turned around. Last week I talked about myself in prayer. And I gave the example of going out to 3 different places. In all 3 different places, I didn't wear a mask. The last one being a doctor's office. And I was very concerned, and I was really, I was praying to God about this. I don't know what to do. If I go to that doctor's office, they're for sure going to tell me I have to wear a mask. I just don't know what to do. But if I wear a mask, I'm being capricious, and I'm not being honest. I'm being hypocritical. Didn't know what to do. Stopped in front of the doctor's office in the car. Had a mask with me. Meditated there for about 5 minutes. You might call that prayer. And then got out of the car. I don't know whether I forgot the mask. I don't know whether I was moved to go in without it. But I went in and without the mask. 3 receptionists there. Signed in. And they didn't say a thing to me about the mask. They called me up to the desk a couple different times, which I thought, okay, here it is. I'm going to have to make that decision. They gave me a mask to wear when I left, but not before I went in. They gave me paperwork to fill out, and they asked me questions. And I got back all the way back to the examination room, and it wasn't until the doctor came in and said, "Hey, where's your mask?" that anything really happened. Now, I consider that God blinding several people in that doctor's office to my presence without a mask. Now, I mentioned last week that I was really concerned that folks that didn't see me, and this was a spiritual blindness that didn't see me, might have gotten in trouble. But they shouldn't have. The doctor himself knew I didn't have a mask on, yet he gave me the examination. He indicated to me that he's a Christian. So I wonder what he did. And I wonder what he'll learn from this prayer of mine. And I talked about circular prayer. It seems a lot of folks that I know, I don't know this for sure, but a lot of folks that I know and I talk with will pray, but when God knocks on their door and asks them to do something which is related to that prayer, what do? Yeah, they pray about it. What? What do you mean pray about it? Pray and then don't do? Faith without works is dead, and prayer without works is just as dead. Pray that God would open your eyes, that he would lead you, because we all have to be doers. You don't have to be writing to congressmen or be on the phone all week like I am. Do what you're comfortable with. Do what you're good at. But for God's sakes, do. If you if you go to vote, whether early voting, I still don't know how I feel about that. I did it, but I don't know how I feel about it. And you go to the voting booth, let's say on November 3rd, and you've shown up with a mask on. And that mask says, "Make America Great Again." And you're stopped at the door. And they say, "You got to take your mask off." And you go, "Well, wait a minute. It says I have to wear a mask. It doesn't specify anything else." What would you do? What should be done? Just being ornery here. Toss the mask away. I like that, Mr. Anderson. Talk the mask. Christians, here's your message this morning. Bear witness to the truth. Bear witness to the truth. We have a huge decision to make.
I voted early. I went in. I just walked right through, no mask. And nobody said a word to me.
Well,
Took care of me like I was an old guy.
I'll put your story on neighborhood news, and then you'll get some comments on it. Neighborhood website.
Early voting center. Early voting center. They had 2,000.
Yeah, I think there's like 55,000 people, 55 million people that have voted already. Starting to sound like the Biden. I don't know the numbers. Or Kamala Harris. She had the same problem. 55 million people voted. 62 million people put Donald Trump in office. 62 million people. Almost half of that number have voted already. I don't know what that means. I know that the mail thing is going to cause all kinds of problem. November 3rd, November 4th, the election will not be decided. And I heard somebody talking this morning about a week after that. I think it's going to take a little longer than the week. if at all. And we got some sore losers here, folks. We got some sore losers. Meet you at the polls. Hopefully we can bring Kurt on here in about 2 or 3 minutes. B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson. This is your last call.
Last call with B.J. Edwards. Real talk about real life.
I'm going to let Kirk explain to you what he's doing. He's very much involved in the prayer world. And Kirk, come on with us. Bring him in there, Mr. Anderson, if you would. Kirk Knock, welcome to Last Call.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are you?
I'm blessed. We're blessed. I misspelled your name on purpose when I put the promo out, so I spelled it K-N-O-C-K. But out of orneriness, I did that. So I apologize to you, Kirk.
I got one of those names you can spell about 20 different ways, so I'm used to it.
It's very usable. Very usable.
Exactly.
Where are you calling us from, Kirk?
Here in Spring, Texas.
Texas. Oh my goodness.
So
Great state.
how am I sounding on your end?
You sound perfect.
Okay, good.
Sound good. So Kirk, we've had you on the program before. I think was it the Esther fast that we talked about last time?
Right, that would have been back in June.
Okay. So what are you doing now leading up to the election in November?
A lot going on. You also had me on back in 2018 when we were starting the Meet You at the Polls prayer initiative. And we're doing that this year as well. And what that is where the Church of America is called to gather at their local civic flagpole. That could be your city hall, county courthouse, or state capitol on the 4th Sunday afternoons at 3 p.m., just before the election, where we lift up our country and our leaders and our church in prayer and ask that God would enable us to elect righteous men and women to public office for the election. And so we've had our first 2 meetings already. Our next Meet You at the Poll meeting will come up tomorrow. And so there's still opportunity for people to be involved with that. You don't have to have attended all 4 to be part of the effort. Whenever you hear about it is when you can start. So any of your listeners who would like to join us, just show up at your local flagpole. You may be the only person there, and that's fine. Or you could come with your Bible study group, your church, or maybe you'll just run into some people who are there on their own initiative. Make some new friends. It's a situation where we gather publicly in order to pray and repent. We walk through 2 Chronicles 7:14, and each Sunday we have a group of prayer points that we go through.
Kirk, you mentioned that they can pray on their own. Is this a national outreach that you're doing right now, or is it just local for the Texas area?
It's national. You guys, I'm sure, are familiar with, probably talked about the September 26th prayer initiatives that occurred in Washington, D.C. That was Franklin Graham's prayer march and Jonathan Cahn's The Return. Both of those events were held that Saturday, and it was a time for the church around America to come to Washington, D.C., if they were able to do so, in order to, again, gather together to beseech our Father in heaven on behalf of our country. Most people weren't able to do that. I couldn't get to Washington, D.C., and of course, with the virus situation, a lot of people aren't traveling anywhere. This is an opportunity to engage in the same thing. It's a national public prayer ministry, which is focused on standing before the world to proclaim our faith in Jesus Christ, our Savior, to commit our country to Him, to turn individually and as the body of Christ and as America from our wicked ways, that we might ask God for His forgiveness and that He would heal our land. So this is kind of the same thing that happened in Washington, but it enables us to do it locally.
Kurt, a couple things. First of all, can you give us contact information if folks want to find out more about what you're doing in any particulars? But also, Are you connected up with other prayer groups across the nation, and if so, who? And what kind of a coordinated effort are we talking about here?
Yes, first of all, go to govpray.com, govpray.com. If you type in .org, that will get you there as well. And you'll find all the information there. In terms of what the groups that we're tied in with, we're not officially tied in with any group. This is a standalone prayer ministry called GovPray. But we have partnered with a number of ministries. Intercessors for America, IFA Pray, is a huge group that was started by Derek Prince back in the 1970s. And they send out daily prayer bulletins for intercessors around the United States to pray for, focusing on our country and leaders, but certainly getting into cultural issues and so forth as well. They have been very, very helpful to us in publicizing our prayer initiatives, and a lot of people have come into this as a result of their announcements. Then other organizations would be the Congressional Prayer Caucus has gotten on board, Prayer Chain Online. I mean, there's a whole slew of different ministries that have sent out emails and bulletins and so forth to their own individual intercessors. So God has granted us favor in the eyes of a number of very prominent national organizations. We're very thankful for that. And then there's, go ahead, BJ.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to mention, so that was one thing that we're doing right now called Meet You at the Polls. But the other thing that we're doing is another Esther fast. And that's what we had talked about back in June, where God had called us to come together for 3 days, the end of June, beginning of July, again, on behalf of our country. We're in a very difficult situation right now here in America. We're walking through times we've never been before, and we don't know what tomorrow is going to look like. And God called an Esther fast for the end of June, early July, and thousands of people around the United States and even around the world joined in. We had people on every continent, Christians praying for America, with America during that 3-day period. And we're doing the same thing now, and that particular initiative is going to start on Halloween evening, October 31st. That's a Saturday night at sundown, and it will conclude sundown Tuesday night, which is Election Day. So from Halloween evening to Election Day evening, we will be going without food, drink, and water as we come before the throne of God in humility and repentance and ask Him to pour out His Spirit and do something in this country.
The end of October is kind of like a high holiday for another group of folks. I'll call them the Satanists. And you aren't the only ones doing some praying, brother, at the end of October.
Yes. Yeah. And what a perfect 3-day interval, right? I mean, beginning on, as you said, their high holy day, right? When everybody comes together to celebrate everything that is dark and evil and wicked in this world. We start there, but we're going to pray through this thing for those 3 days. And we are praying that we're going to see God's hand move on Election Day. I don't know, I don't know what the future holds. Everybody's got their own opinion. Some people see great revival in our country turning. Other people see a long period of very, very difficult times. And it could go either way. But God's will is going to be done. And we know that God really works in and through the church during periods of time, periods of persecution and distress. So whatever happens, I'm perfectly cool with that because I know that my Lord and Savior is in control. So we'll just say it's in His hands.
And we have to be good with that. I fear, Kirk, that we're going to get what we deserve. Because we've earned the right to have our rear ends just ripped. And I'm sorry, but we have. And I'm talking about we Christians have earned that right. And I know that God has grace, but He's in my life, Kirk, I've always learned by those hard times, by those rough times. I'm not wishing this on America, but I'm going, it wouldn't surprise me if there was a little bit of heat applied to Christians over the next few months or years.
I am afraid that I agree with you on that, BJ. There are a lot of believers out there who really take issue with anyone who comes up and says, we've got dark days coming. They regard that as being a lack of faith. They'll point to Psalm 91 and various passages in the Bible that says that we're going to be protected from all these things. And God does protect us. He does provide for us, but we are the church. And when you look at the New Testament, step away from the Old Testament. That was a little bit different story, a little different context. God is working differently right now through the church. The post-resurrection era operates differently. We're now part of the kingdom of God. And the blessings that God promises us are generally more spiritual in nature than physical in nature. And that's why you don't see prosperity gospel in the New Testament. Paul wasn't living or preaching that. Nobody was. No, we saw that Paul says you can expect to suffer. You can expect to be persecuted. You have to take up your cross. You have to walk away from wife and mother and so forth in order to follow me. It is a call of sacrifice and commitment. And those individuals who just think that God is going to shield us somehow from anything that's bad are very, very misinformed. And they don't do honor to all of those Christians around the world who are truly suffering right now and have for hundreds of years, terrible persecution and martyrdom and so forth, all for the sake of the name of their Savior. And the idea that we as Christians in America are immune or exempt for that is blasphemous. And it does such a disservice to the sacrifice of others. And we see that particularly in Hebrews 11, where the writer of Hebrews discusses these great men of faith. But those a lot of those men, when they came to the end of their lives, it wasn't a pretty picture. A lot of it says, there were guys who were out there who were sawn in half, and yet the world was not worthy of them. And they didn't seek to be released because they were looking for a greater resurrection. I'm convicted when I read that sort of thing because I know that this is God's heart and this speaks to truth. And truth is something that is in short supply in our world right now. And unfortunately, that includes the church.
Sometimes, especially the church. What I would that's not your opinion. That's mine.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
The thing that we really need to remember is that a couple things. Number one, when God set up the world, he set up physical laws, but he also set up spiritual laws. And they're as solid as the physical laws. And God is a righteous God. And that's sometimes something we want to forget. Well, I'll just go ahead and do this, and then he'll forgive me, and everything's going to be okay. There's still those physical and spiritual laws that he set up that we are subjective to, and he cannot say, well, okay, I'm going to excuse you from this physical law, or I'm going to excuse you from this spiritual law, just because you're a nice guy, okay, and because your intentions are good. So don't worry about it. And I catch some of that out there, and it concerns me. We need to be look up. Kirk, I'm going to give you some news here. This is a news flash. I'm not perfect. I know. Stop. But I'm not perfect. Nor is anyone else. So we have to deal with those things.
When we were kids, our parents taught us the concept of consequences. You do something wrong, there are consequences to that. You do something right, there are consequences to that. And that boils down to what you're talking about, those eternal, immutable principles that God created this universe with. They're both physical and spiritual. There are consequences. And we, as individuals or as a church, can sin, and we can be forgiven. And God can cast that sin away as far as the east is from the west. But that doesn't negate the consequences of that sin. Sometimes those consequences are things that we live with the rest of our lives, knowing that we're forgiven, being forgiven, and yet we deal with those consequences. And that is true nationally as it is individually. And yes, our country is experiencing consequences from our walk away from God over the past 50 or 60 years, particularly. And it's something that we're going to have to deal with probably the rest of our lives, and until Jesus comes back. I mean, those consequences are going to redound, and they're not going to be good. But we do know this, that God, even in through those consequences, even through the difficulties and the pain that we bring upon ourselves, can and will work to His benefit, to the furtherance of the kingdom, and to our benefit ultimately as well. And that's the beautiful thing about it. And that's what we can rest in, with our assurance that God is in control. He is our provider. He is our Father. He loves us. He wants the best for us. But He knows, as a good Father does, that sometimes the best for us is allowing us to experience the consequences and strengthening us through that. So tough days coming up, probably, BJ. I gotta say, that's my personal feeling. But
Amen, brother.
I'm not beaten down. I'm not depressed. I mean, we all get a little depressed at times, to be honest. Obviously, I mean, it can weigh heavily on us, and it should. I mean, we're in a terrible, terrible situation that we brought upon ourselves. But ultimately, we know who wins, and that is such a great and liberating idea.
Mr. Anderson, we're going to take a quick break, if you would, sir. And then when we come back, Kirk, I want you to talk to me about your individual journey and your corporate journey. We can take that in terms of prayer or faith, and or both. Yeah.
Last Call with BJ Edwards. Real talk about real life.
And we are back. I think we have a caller on the line. Let me see if I can bring them on. Caller, can you hear us okay?
Yes, Jim. This is Keith Newmeyer. How you doing?
Keith, I'm blessed, brother. Thanks for calling in. Do you have a question for our guest today? Or a comment?
You know, I just gotta say, tell him thanks for coming on the show. And Jim, I just gotta tell you, you have been amazing in helping us out here with our case and with our issues with Montana CPS. There's an opportunity for you to be on the radio here, and as you know, our senator's office is also very appreciative of your help. Thank you.
Keith, thank you. I appreciate that. Folks, that's just part of the doing. That's just part of the doing. It's the right thing to do. God puts the opportunity in front of you. I know there's a lot of prayer coverage, Keith, and I feel confident that we're eventually going to win this game. I don't know what that's going to look like, but we're eventually going to win it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and mute you, Keith, and then you can go ahead and listen on this line if you wish. There we go. Keith has issues with, he's had a couple of children that were taken out of his home. Keith, a good Christian lad, and I don't want to get into the details of CPS. We'll have to do that again someday soon. But anyway, individual journey for you, Kirk Knock. And how did a nice guy like you get in a position like this?
Well, BJ, I think you and I must be related, because I'm also one of those sinners you were talking about. And my life has certainly not been exemplary at times. Not sure that it is today, for that matter. But I have been saved by grace through faith, and was raised as a Catholic and came to know Jesus through the Catholic Church and the Charismatic Renewal back in the 1970s. And my spiritual journey has taken me into different denominations and different situations. But, they're like all of us, there are times of growth and there are times where we stagnate. Sometimes there are times that we move backwards, and that's certainly been true for me. But over the last number of years, I have learned the importance and the joy and the strength that comes through really, really spending a lot of time in God's Word. I have come to love the Bible in a way that I would never have expected possible. And that came through just a determined devotion and decision to spend time on a daily basis. And I'll spend 1 or 2 hours a day just in prayer and reading and writing the things that the Spirit reveals to me as I'm going through that, and on so many different topics. And it's been so helpful to me to understand and put into perspective the things that I'm seeing going on right now in our world, and trying to make sense of everything. Because for me, that's important. Truth to me is a value that God has placed in my heart as being so dear to me. Because in this world today, especially, what is truth? Everybody's got their own opinion, and I just find that the Bible speaks to so much of that, and I'm just so thankful for it. But as I've grown in my personal walk over the years, I've come to understand that it's more than just my relationship with God, and it's more than just praying. And I'm not a natural born intercessor or prayer. I mean, that is hard for me to do. It just doesn't come natural as it does for some people. So I've got to really push myself in that area. The Bible study is easier for me, but as I've grown, I've come to understand, it's not a matter of just praying or studying. It's a matter of doing something. Going again back to Hebrews 11, every one of those men that we see that's mentioned, it says that they had faith, and then they went out and did something by faith. Abraham did this, or by faith, this person did this. By faith, Rahab, did this with the spies. There was always an object. There was always a verb, an action that came as a result of the faith. And people who just say, well, I have faith, God's going to take care of me, I don't have to do anything, it's in his department. That's, I think, pretty misguided. That's not what the Bible teaches us. Faith without works is dead. God calls us to work, to do something, to be change agents. We are ministers of reconciliation here in our world. And if we're not fulfilling that, then we're going to have to answer for that, because Ephesians 2:10 says that we were created in Christ Jesus for good works that God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. And I personally believe that we are in the last days of the last days, that we very likely will see the return of Christ, because everything is leading up to that. We see prophecies being fulfilled. We just see things coming to a head. And why did God have you born at this time? Why did God have me born at this time? What special things is it that we are called to do that nobody else has been called to do? And I want to know what those are, and I want to fulfill those while I'm here and not leave that work for somebody else who wasn't called to do it. And I know that you get the same way.
Yeah, exactly. And I had mentioned something about circular prayer in my program last week. And here's what I look at it. It's you've got a couple that are praying to God, and let's say they're praying about COVID-19. And Lord, please intercede, help out. Well, we have somebody in the same neighborhood on the same block that gets that message. And he decides, okay, I'm going to run a petition and see if we can make this neighborhood, this zip code, a freedom and liberty zone. So he goes door to door and he knocks on the door. This couple had just prayed. And the couple take a look at the petition. They see it's COVID-19. And they look at him and they say, okay, thank you very much. I'll tell you what, we'll pray about it. And I'm going, wait a minute. This is the result of your prayer. It's very difficult, and Satan is so deceptive. I get that. It's very difficult. Prayer is not an excuse, I guess is what I'm going to say to you. It's not an excuse. It's not a reason to get out of something. And I often say that every time I pray, Kirk, God gives me something to do. And I'm going, Lord, no, you don't understand. I'm not praying so I have more to do, Lord. I got too much to do now. Why are you giving me more to do? That must not be the answer to my prayer. I'm sorry. You didn't get it right.
Yeah, I mean, I have this conversation with God all the time. Aren't there retired guys out there who could be doing this work? People out there who they're on a golf course, they're taking vacations. I know plenty of people who have plenty of time in their lives to do what you're asking me to do. I've got 2 businesses I'm trying to run. I don't have time to do anything anymore. I mean, I am so totally devoted to the things that are on my plate that I don't have time to get to. Why is God calling me to do this, such and such a thing? And I guess that's another one of those principles of the universe we were talking about, where God understands that if you want to get something done, give it to the guy who doesn't have time to do it. And so here we are. But
that's a great quote, by the way. That's just a great quote.
What a blessing it is, right, BJ, to know that we are being used in an eternal way. I mean, why would God have picked a couple of schmucks like us? I don't know who you are. We've never met personally, but you strike me as a regular guy. You know, you're out there doing your thing. You're working. You're doing what you feel God has called you to do, and you just put leave the results up to Him, right? We just say, God, I don't know. I believe you told me to do this. I'm going to do it, and the fruit and the harvest are yours. But I'm going to be faithful in what I believe the Holy Spirit is calling me to do. And there is such a freedom in that, to know that, I don't have to worry about the bottom line results. I don't have to worry how many people do Esther fast. I don't have to worry about how many flagpoles around the United States are covered by prayer. That's not my department. I have no control over that. I just got to be faithful to get the word out, organize it, make sure that people know what's going on, and then leave it up to Him. So I encourage your listeners, all those people out there who are listening and watching us right now, pray to God, say, what do you have me here to do? Why am I born? What's going on here? Is it just to be able to make a living for my wife and family? Well, that's good. Nothing wrong with that. You're supposed to do that. But what special do you have for me to do? And then go for it.
Duty is ours. The results are God's. I think John Adams said that. Doesn't make any difference. It's a great quote. We've got about 4 minutes left, Kirk, and we're going to have to let you go. Again, contact information, something you want to leave the audience with. 3 o'clock on Sunday, meet at a flagpole someplace in a public place. If it's and boy, I've been there and done that. If it's just you, then it's just you. And if it's colder than the Dickens and you got to wear a hat and whatever, just be there. Somebody will notice, and not just God. Somebody will notice.
Yes. And may even provide an opportunity for ministry there, as has happened to us at our flagpole a couple of times. But go to govpray.com, govpray.com, and you will be able to download the prayer points for this coming Sunday. So this is the third Sunday that we're doing this. So when you show up, you can bring those prayer points with you, and we're going to be praying through certain things. And those things that you're praying for are going to be prayed for by people all over the United States when they gather at their flagpoles. And we're doing that, of course, time zone by time zone. So it's at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, wherever it is that you live. And we hope that you'll join us, but especially the Esther fast, I think, is really, really important. And I just think that there's such power when the Church of God comes together publicly and corporately to pray to our Father in heaven. I think that moves the gates, and I'm just so excited and so thrilled at what God is going to do and has been doing through this. BJ and Anderson, thank you very much for having me on this morning.
Thank you, Brother Kirk. And again, this is your Father in heaven, and we should treat him with the respect that we should treat our Father here on planet Earth. And praise is part of that. Amen. It's something we don't do enough here, period, to our fathers here on planet Earth. But the God that created us has the same want, if you will, to be appreciated for what He's done for us, and the havoc that He's kept from us. Because, brother, we've earned the right to have a lot of havoc. Kirk, I really appreciate you taking the time with us today, brother. God bless you. Mr. Anderson's got an I Pray shirt on, and I'm wearing a Ohio State Buckeye shirt on, so I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed. Nice job, Mr. Anderson. And nice job to you, Kirk. Thank you very much, brother. God bless you.
Keep you in line.
Yeah. I think we're due for a break, aren't we, Mr. Anderson? A hard break?
I think we're close. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Kurt. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Kurt.
And by the way, I was one of those only guys at the flagpole before. All right. Where's the break thing? Got one here somewhere.
I've got the number here 1 hour in, Mr. Anderson.
We're in.
Keeping you informed. This is Last Call with BJ Edwards.
We were back. Thank you, Keith. Keith, I really appreciate that.
Keith. Yeah. that phone
Keith
call.
Newmeyer. I like to keep it on the down low, Keith. I don't want people to know all the good things I'm doing. That's none of their business. We're going to talk about politics today. We're going to talk about California Governor, the Grinch, Gavin. Just incredible. I went over our local next door. You know, one thing we haven't gone through in a while is our headlines, which tell an awful lot about what we're doing. Before we do that, we had Kurt Knock on our program, and Kirk's leading the national prayer group out of Texas, and there's other prayer groups. Our good friend from Katoma, Michael, is also doing that. And I think there's another group also, isn't there, Mr. Anderson?
If my people.
If my people? Yeah, that's true. Tried to get them on. I don't know what's happening, but I thought there was going to be able to get them on this week, but they're doing the same thing. They're doing the same thing. Anyway, headlines. BJ, you need to pull your head out of the Trump train and do some research. Study to show yourself approved and stop making false judgments about PPL sexuality. I love our listeners. I love our listeners.
What is that about?
Oh, that's our good friend. That's our good friend, Rob. We're praying for you, Rob. Marxist founder, headline. Marxist founder of Black Lives Matter inks deal with Warner Brothers Television. White Americans are incredibly demonized. We're going through headlines. Here's a good one. Just get the darn vaccinations. 9 dead after flu shot in South Korea sparked vaccine scare. Former Twitter and Google executive calls for Trump to be banned from social media until after the election. Look, do you understand what you're doing when you're voting for leftists? Do you understand what you're doing? You are saying that you want government more involved in our lives, that the government knows better what to do with your life and your children's life than you do. Do you understand what you're doing there? Do you understand that communism doesn't work? Do you understand that this group of people does not accept their defeat, never have, and have demonized their opponent to the point, and so often, that Americans can't see straight. All they can see is hate. All they can see is envy. Yet you support that, and you criticize people that like capitalism, that like to have more support over their tax money, that don't give in to a pandemic. Look at, brother, you deserve what you voted for. Just don't drag us into it, okay? Just don't drag us into it. Take your medicine. Back to headlines. Idaho teacher walk out of job to protest having to work. There you go. There you go. That's part of the leftist. They walk out because they have to work. Teachers. Union teachers.
Commie Union.
Have they filed charges yet on that Illinois Kenosha kid? I don't know what's going on there. I've got an article here that says they haven't, they're not going to. Biden lies his way through the debate. Oh, do a fact check on this, brother. Do a fact check. But that's okay. That's okay. Trump's worse than he is. Yeah. Russia. Well, what? Nope, sorry. Can't prove that. at least with Trump. But boy, is there ever a trail of crumbs leading to Biden. Pennsylvania Supreme Court. Counties can't reject mail-in ballots when signatures don't match. Good Lord. Another leftist action. We the people. Inside the fall of the CDC, another headline. Trump physician says president's developed COVID-19 antibodies. Democrats plan major economic changes if they sweep in November. And good Lord, folks, are they ever going to change things? Back to where we were before. Gay marriage, killing of unborn babies. Oh, there's a lot to love about the Dems and about leftists, isn't there? A woman's choice. Except when it comes to a vaccination. My body, my choice. Right? Duplicitous. Liars. My opinion, folks. And I believe that this change is technically called socialism. The government runs everything into the ground. And when the people find out exactly what it really means, hate's an awful thing, brother. Hate is an awful thing. It'll rule your life. Then it becomes communism when they have to force socialism. The government knows best what to do. They don't know how to create wealth. They know how to consume it, but they don't know how to create it. They let the capitalist create it. I don't care. I don't care if the richest man in the world doesn't pay a dime in taxes. Why? Because what our government does with those monies. Yes, and if Biden gets in, we'll be able to give more money to Planned Parenthood. And we can get rid of that Mexican plan. Oh my goodness. Think of the number of babies that we can kill.
And old.
Yeah, and old folks, yeah. Speak for yourself, Mr. Anderson. Those who forget the past are destined to repeat it. Jorge Santayana. And for all you prideful, atomistic baby boomers who refuse to follow the fifth commandment, it's called a sin. And sorry, ignorance is no excuse under the law, nor is it a reason under God's law. Supreme Court allows Pennsylvania to count absentee ballots after Election Day. Boy, is this going to be a mess. You know, for the most part, you Christian, progressive leftists, the Bible uses a word to describe the left side of the body. It refers to the material world and to things that are not spiritual in nature. On the flip side of the coin, the right is used to describe spiritual aspect of things and those who are spiritually awakened or enlightened. You got to do a Google search, left and right in the Bible.
Use start page, not Google.
Start page? Okay.
Startpage.com. For
S-T-A-R-T?
S-T-A-R-T. Startpage.com.
Start.com. Interesting.
It doesn't record what you do. And
Yep. Oh, okay. Okay, that's cool.
And it also searches more than one.
Let me tell you what we're talking about here. I can't believe that you could be that stupid. I just can't believe that. You're smarter than that. You're smarter than that. I mentioned Coach Dave Dobmeier's show, and the other day on his show, somebody had written him an email, sent him an email, which is so prophetic. It was so good.
That was a good email.
Yep. Well, I'm glad you said that, Mr. Anderson, because I'm going to read it.
Well, share it with us.
This morning, this is the email, I realize that everything is about to change. No matter how I vote, no matter what I say, lives are never going to be the same. 302-202-1110, 745-353. No matter how I vote, no matter what I say, lives are never going to be the same. And that is true. The hate that has been entered into this, the envy that has been entered into this, and it's being projected on the very people that are trying to stop it. Satan is a great communicator. He's incredible. But I digress. Back to the email. I've been confused by the hostility of family and friends. Division. Confusion. I look at people I have known all my life, so hate-filled that they agree with opinions they would never express on their own. I think that I might well have entered the twilight zone. Combine that with Bizarro world, brother, because that's where you are, where right is wrong and wrong is right. We see other countries going socialist and collapsing, but it seems like a great plan to us. Especially if Joe Biden says, because Joe Biden's a good guy. Yeah. And Kamala's black, so it's okay. Somehow it's un-American for the census to count how many Americans are in America. Woohoo! People who say there is no such thing as gender are demanding a female president. Universities that advocate equality discriminate against Asian Americans in favor of African Americans, whatever that is. Some people are held responsible for things that happened before they were born, and other people are not held responsible for what they're doing right now. This is so good. May have to put this up on our Facebook page. Criminals are caught and released to hurt more people, but stopping them is bad because it's a violation of their rights. Cuckoo, 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 cuckoo. People who have never owned slaves should pay slavery reparations to people who have never been slaves. If a dude pretends to be a woman, you're required to pretend with him. It was cool for Joe Biden to blackmail the president of Ukraine, but it's an impeachable offense if Donald Trump inquires about it. Insane. People who have never been to college should pay the debts of college students who took out a huge loan for their own degrees. I'll let that sink in. Immigrants with tuberculosis and polio are welcome, but soon you'll be required to prove that you have been vaccinated. Irish doctors and German engineers who want to immigrate to the U.S. must go through a rigorous vetting process. But any illiterate gangbanger who jumps the southern fence are welcome. $5 billion for border security is too expensive, but $1.5 trillion for free health care is not. If you cheat to get into college, you're going to go to prison. But if you cheat to get into the country, you go to college for free. And pointing out all this hypocrisy somehow makes selected white Americans racist. You can get onto a crowded plane with a mask, but you can't get into church with a mask or a cross. Nothing makes sense anymore. No values, no morals, no civility, and people are dying of the, yes, Chinese virus. But it's racist to refer to it as a Chinese virus, even though it began in China. Hong Kong flu.
Spanish.
Mm-hmm. We're really living in an upside down world where right is wrong and wrong is right. Where moral is immoral and immoral is moral. I was watching TV the other night. An advertisement come on for a drug that helps sodomites have sex with one another. And oh, how affectionate, especially the sodomite males, were with one another, holding hands, kissing, hugging. Oh, good Lord.
And nature says,
where good is evil and evil is good. Where killing murderers is wrong, but killing innocent babies is right. Wake up, America. Like the great unsinkable ship Titanic, America has hit an iceberg. It's taking on water and sinking fast. The choice really is ours to make. And what will it be? Time is short and of the essence. Make your choice wisely. Freedom or dictatorship? Oligarchy? Communism or capitalism? Wealth consumption, wealth creation. I pray that we do not get what we deserve, but fear it is the only choice we have left with our Creator to do. God help us all. God help us all. Let that soak in, folks. B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson. When we come back, Trump versus Biden. Mr. Anderson, I don't. In the 60s and 70s, we were really released. Freedom, liberties. And I can remember the greatest invention of all time, which was the pill. And the only thing that men really cared about was whether that woman they had on their arm, okay, it was really a woman. I mean, a real biological woman that they had on their arm. The only thing they cared about is, are they on the pill or not? Free love. Make love, not war. Man is so insane. Man is so crazy. Go ahead, Mr. Anderson. I'm sorry.
I said, it sounds good, doesn't it?
Oh, it does. It does.
But
Are you kidding me?
the word love is just not really understood. What real love is.
A key component of love is respect. Something we've kind of lost sight of here in America. Respect for each other. Respect for your parents. Oh my goodness. We're so atomized. We send our kids to government-run schools, and we teach them that life has no meaning, no respect for life. Morals are relative, no respect for morals. Man, not God, is a creation of all things, no respect for your creator. The state, we learn to respect them. The state is your daddy, but at the cost of not having respect for your parents, for your relatives, for those that cared about you, for those that took you to the hospital at 3 o'clock in the morning with a fever of 103. Those folks. The ones that worried about you when you're out on your first drive around the car. Huh? But the government knows best. The government really does know best, right? What is the matter with us? Now, design flaw? What do you think, Mr. Anderson? That's a question that has to be out there on the table. Is there a design flaw here? I know choice has consequences and it has responsibilities. Something maybe one of you could answer. 302-202-1110. This is B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson, your last call. Is there hope? Go ahead, Mr.
Design
Anderson.
flaw in what? Education?
Yes.
Or well, we have a problem with families in general. Education began with the idea of teaching people to be literate enough to read the Bible. That was the original, if you ever heard the term hornbook idea.
Hmm.
The hornbook was early textbook that was used to teach reading, and it used Bible verses and biblical principles to teach children how to read and write. That was the whole purpose of public education in the beginning. Now, what did they do? They removed all of that. There's the design flaw. One of the things that I've heard, I don't know how true it is. I mean, it's hard to research everything, and it's hard to know that your research is really coming up with real information. But I have heard, actually have heard Trump in one of his rallies talk about getting back to teaching the foundations of this country, the founders and their ideas and principles, and reintroducing that back into our schools, in our public schools. That's encouraging to me.
Well, but I don't like the idea of government-run schools. Something bad's going to happen. Something bad's going to happen.
But the overwhelming majority of people have two working parents, and they don't know what else to do with their kids during the day.
Two wrongs don't make a right.
Well, how do we make it right?
First of all, recognize that it's a problem. And we don't recognize, the President of the United States doesn't recognize it as a problem. Again, public schools teach four things. Life has no meaning, morals are relative, man's the maze for all thing, and the state's your daddy, and they teach it well. And you send your kids off to government-run schools. 12 years later, they send you back complete strangers. And then we're stupid enough that we send them off to finishing schools, which we call colleges. The greatest thing about this pandemic is the opportunity for parents to homeschool their children. By the way, have you gotten your rebate back from your school? The tax rebate? You haven't heard about that? Yeah, well, you see they're not running full bore. They're running maybe a half or a third or a quarter what they normally do, so us taxpayers are going to get a refund because they're not spending that money.
That's what we got to tell those teachers that are going out on strike.
Fear. What a motivator. We talked about that in one of our meetings, that we're just so afraid. And that our God is not a God of fear. Our God is not a God of fear. And our God is not stupid. And he doesn't expect us to be stupid. But yet, we are. We are. Is there hope? Yes, there is. Yes, there is. That's why you're listening here, so you can hear hope. Right? By design, there are three main institutions that are critical to any society. Three main institutions that are critical to any society. And depending on which ones of these institutions that are emphasized, it will surely dictate the rise or demise of a nation. So what are the three institutions? Now, if you're a Christian, it should be boom, boom, boom. Family. church and state. And they were all created by God. Family, church, and state. Those are the three institutions. Now, by chance, I suppose, God created a family first. Just by chance, he flipped a coin. What do I do first here? I don't know. Family, government, church. Gosh, I just don't know. Oh, he knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing. He knew what the foundation was of society. NaturalFamilyStrong.com, by the way. NaturalFamilyStrong.com. We've got suggestions in there for what you can do. Have you sign our pledge. We need to get back some of those pledge signers, Mr. Anderson, and start letting them know what we're doing and ask them what they're doing. I think it'd be a good idea to do. Help me do that project this week, if you would.
Get back on that one.
Yep.
Now that my arm is healing.
Yes, you're feeling better. Again, our choice is quite simple. Are we going to further empower the government? Joe Biden, Camille, Nancy. Are we going to further enhance their ability to control our lives? How about the church? Good grief. The mega churches, what are they doing? What are they doing? So we're going to give them more power? We're going to give them more influence? More responsibility? They gave it all up to the government. Educate children? Government. Right? Morals? What? What? Yeah. Gay marriage? Killing of unborn babies? Divorce? Lying's okay? Cheating's okay? If you're a politician, I mean, that's what you do. That's what we should expect in America, right? Mm-hmm. You suppose I'm making friends this morning, Mr. Anderson? In a nutshell, Donald Trump has already proven he wants to further empower the family. That is unquestionable. How do I know that? What's one of the first things he did? Money is the power to make decisions, folks. The more money you have, the more decisions you can make. Did you know that? That's why we all want to be rich, right? So we can do anything we want to do with money. I hear you, Don. I hear you. Not Donald Trump, another Don. Tax cut. Boom. You make decisions. He's loosened regulations on businesses. He canceled the Paris Accord, again, controlling the U.S., not just from our government, but from other governments. He brought jobs back. He did what he could to defund Planned Parenthood. He stifled foreign invasion of our nation, illegal immigration. Everything that he has done, he's been criticized for. Everything that he's done. Think about that. Everything that he's done, he's been criticized for.
Well, and it's not publicized.
That's true. But the positives he does, you never hear about them.
You don't hear about it. Unless you hear a negative part.
Yeah. Well, he should have done this, but he only did that, is what you hear. So regardless of what he does, it's never enough. It's never right. And he's morally incompetent. And I didn't hire a clergy in chief. I didn't want that. I wanted somebody with an ego. Somebody with the strength to be able to take the criticism that you're going to get every day for trying to do the right thing. Somebody that's trying to break up the deep state. And you've been lied to. Lied to. And accepted it if you don't see that. Has he made mistakes? Oh, you bet your sweet bippy. But overall, in spite of the resistance that this man has gotten, in spite of it, he's managed to accomplish some pretty incredible things. Now, they'll tell you that we're no longer respected as a nation, but I can tell you this. Money is a power to make decisions. We've gotten more of that back. We've got more jobs back in America. They respect us. They more now fear us as versus getting somebody in like Kamala Harris or Joey. Take a quick break, Mr. Anderson, and I'll complete my thoughts on this. B.J. Edwards along, Mr. Anderson, your last call.
Faith, discussion, and so much more. Last Call with B.J. Edwards.
Quiet on that right side of the ledger there, Mr. Anderson. So we're talking about America. We're talking about Donald Trump. We're talking about conservatives. We're talking about leadership. By the way, he is showing leadership. He is showing leadership. This man stands up. Like what he does or not, he stands up. Not mealy mouse, popsicle, icicle. He's appointed solid court justices. He's made us energy independent. Got rid of reinstated the pro-family Mexican City policy. The list goes on. Now there's Joe Biden. And when you speak of Joe, at least when I think of Joe, I think of the number 47. 47. He was the 47th VP. Somebody's trying to call in on the other line. All right, hang in there. Roger, are you with us? Don't know whether I can hear you or not, Roger. Maybe he'll pipe in.
He's on the wrong phone line.
Yeah, I know he is. He's always on the wrong line. I don't know whether he's still there or not.
And it's right there on the screen. Oh, he can't see
Yeah.
it, probably.
Call in the other number, Roger, if you would. And we'll be able to get you. I can't get you on this one. I don't think.
Yes, you do.
Okay. Anyway, Joe Biden, the number 47. Why the number 47? Well, did you know that he was the 47th VP of the U.S.? And he's been in politics for 47 years. Interesting, no? But what is truly amazing, and in those 47 years as a public servant, and I use that term very, very loosely.
Servant part?
Mm-hmm. One could argue that he has accomplished very little other than remaining in office while conveniently stuffing the pockets of family members in the process. By all appearances, the new revised Joe Biden is a model Marxist, having become the prize student of Bernie Sanders and fellow classmate AOC. Which means he trusts the state more than the people when it comes to dispersion of goods, services, institutions, and decisions. So here's your choice, and it's really quite simple. Socialism and humanism, that's anti-God, by the way, which always leads to communism and calamity. That really is the decision we're making today. I'm sorry, that is. That's it. Again, history tells us it's a natural thing. You can't give that much power to an oligarchy or a dictatorship and expect things to turn out well. Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts, absolutely. Socialism and humanism, or capitalism and Christianity, which leads to wealth and liberty. job and wealth eaters or job and wealth creators. Family creators or family destroyers. Nation eaters or nation builders. End of story. Wait a minute. This just in. Apparently, Russian President Vladimir Putin attempted to mark a positive resemblance between Democrat presidential candidate and former Vice President, number 47, Joe Biden, and Soviet communist in an interview with the Russia TV channel late this week. Did you know about that? Making the comparison in positive terms, Putin linked Biden to communist ideology during the interview. Strange. Isn't that exactly what we've all been saying, and I've been saying today? What others have been saying for months? And Putin should know because he was himself a former party member, KGB colonel, and intelligence operative for the Communist Party. Quote, the Democrat Party is traditionally closer to the so-called liberal values, closer to social democrat ideas, Putin said. And it was from the social democrat environment that the Communist Party evolved. There's that evolution thingy. And with Putin, I believe, with the Putin comment, I believe the prosecution can rest its case. This choice is yours, fellow citizens. And I pray that in November, or if you vote early, it's not truly the end of the American story. There is hope. There is hope.
Always hope.
I had these thoughts about what happened after President Trump won the election. And it's part of learning and growing up. Being a good loser, that is, which they never were.
Did Trump win the election?
That's true. That's true. The Democrat Party needs to get over it. I remember attending a Donald Trump rally a few weeks or maybe a few months after at the Ohio State House, just after the 2016 election, where leftist sympathizers were waving black flags, spouting communist verbiage due to the fact that America had actually elected a capitalist president. An apolitical outsider who, unlike his opponent, had not spent most of his life parsing words to make sure that they got as many votes as possible. That was the start of the left's hate, resentment, victimization campaign, falsely claiming that there was cheating and Russian interference in the election. And there probably was, but I don't think it was on behalf of Mr. Trump. If only there had been no cheating and the people's voices were really heard, America would have elected another Marxist politician instead of a capitalist businessman who loves his country. Shame on him. The ones we observed in the crowd were acting like spoiled children, exhibiting schoolyard tactics, and who had it, knowing they would not be given more of the government largesse. That's when the complaining, accusations, outright lies in Russiagate began. And it's strange because everything the Democrat Socialists claimed was done to them was exactly what they were doing and are doing to this day to that brazen outsider. What I said then at the meeting to the press, and what I repeat now, is that Donald Trump is president. You lost, now get over it. Be a good loser. It's all part of learning and growing up. And yes, like I said before, those words could come back to haunt me.
Just line up and shake the hands of the other team, right?
Right.
Isn't that what you teach in the Little League?
That isn't what we're teaching. And if these words do come back to haunt me, It'll be the least of my and your worries. Losing gracefully was far from what was had happened, as just the opposite occurred, and as a result, America has been further divided, and our difference actually cauterized to a point in our history where once again, for all intent and purpose, we're in a cold civil war, which is about to heat up regardless of the winner of the upcoming presidential and congressional election. You understand what is going to happen here. And it's going to be further ignited by the fact that a decision will not be made on November 4th.
It's a disturbing thought. Mm-hmm. Very disturbing.
When it's finally declared, and we won't be even close to knowing on November 4th, what the left has sown over the past 4 years will bear its spoiled fruit. If the Dems lose, they will say that it was because Trump cheated again. And if the Dems win, it's because they lied and cheated, which is exactly what they are accusing the majority of good Americans doing. We're going to be in a very, very interesting situation. Mark my words. This has to happen because that's the corner that the God-hating left has forced us into, and the compromising conservatives have allowed to happen. Sadly, both parties deserve what they're about to reap, and the vast majority of Americans are about to receive, short of a miracle, folks. America is about to be crushed and buried, as Khrushchev so prophetically declared in the 1960s, with or without a shoe. Buried in the annals of history we will be by ignorant, selfish, lying, and deceiving kings and queens of hate and envy.
And a complacent church.
This has been sowed for years, and you're right. Mr. Anderson and I and others, coached to this day, are still pounding on the church door, begging them to get involved, pleading with them, and they're not going to do it. I heard a local pastor recently talking about Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and how they stood up to authority. The same pastor shut his church down because the authorities, the state, told
Let me play this short video about that.
Go ahead. Good.
The church is essential. Hi, I'm John MacArthur, and I am pastor of Grace Community Church right here in Los Angeles, and I have been for over half a century. This is a church committed to the bedrock conviction that the Bible is the Word of God, and we, in obedience to that Word, have met together every Sunday for all these years. We've been protected by our government. We've been given freedom to do that. Today's current crop of politicians are trampling on the Constitution and on the resolve of citizens to demand their rights under the pressure of a manufactured fear. The reality is that the COVID data just doesn't match the government's COVID narrative. Here in the state of California, we have 40 million people. The people that have COVID now are 1/100th of 1%, 0.001. You have a 99.999 chance to survive COVID. It's just not what they're saying it is. That absolutely does not warrant shutting down anything, but especially absurdly and arbitrarily, churches that have a special protection from the Constitution. Oh, and at the same time, leaving open abortion clinics, strip clubs, and marijuana dispensaries. And by the way, the health department is on record as saying they are going to allow riots and protests without regard for the mandated health and safety ordinances. This is obviously targeted discrimination. Leftists and secular government officials have no tolerance for biblical Christianity, so they're using COVID as an excuse to shut us down. We have to stand firm on the reality that the church is essential. The most meaningful, transformative, exemplary lives in a community all come together in the church. And that's been our impact on the city of Los Angeles. For 20 weeks, we had no ministry to children, young people, college students, young adults, families. No weddings, no funerals, no ministry to our precious disabled people, and no opportunity to make calls in the hospital to those who were sick. I started preaching to an empty auditorium, and after a few weeks, our people started coming back because they didn't believe the narrative the local government and media were giving them. Week by week, more people came, until finally we had about 7,000 people gathering for worship. The church is the original protester. We go back to the Protestant Reformation 500 years ago, when the government was trying to dictate to the church how it should worship. This is a watershed moment in America. We have been granted by God the freedom to meet as a church, and that is protected by the Constitution. We need to be the church, not only because we're free to be the church, but because we're commanded to be the church by the Lord Jesus Christ, the head of the church. This is a time of all times to meet as the church. Open your church. The church is essential.
Do I sound a little bit like MacArthur? I thought that was me when you first started out there. I'm going, how'd you do that? We have to take a break here shortly, but this has to do with one word. That is faith. What do you have faith in? Seriously, what do you have faith in? Most people I see have faith in government doctors. Lifelong doctors, MDs, that don't practice other than politics. And we're looking at an entire national policy from an insider. And look at us. Just look at us. And we're criticized when we say, wait a minute, something smells funny here. Hey, B.J. Edwards along Mr. Anderson, your last call. We'll talk about Governor Gavin.
If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and if my people, which are called by my name, shall seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven.
And we are back. You've been listening to Last Call.
And watching.
For every action, there's a corresponding reaction. Know that. That's not just your vote that we're talking about, but your daily life. We're going to be presented with an opportunity very soon, maybe even before November 3rd. And we're going to have some decisions to make. And it's all going to depend on what we have faith in. That's going to make that decision. I want to get through this Gavin Newsom nuisance in California. The pastor we just heard is in California. It appears that the California Grinch, Gavin Newsom, is about to do it again. This is something that I read on the internet. This is from the California Department of Public Health. This basically says, and I got this from a report from Ellie Reynolds of the Federalist, that the leftist socialists that means he's a Democrat, had just issued a new set of regulation that bans gathering of more than 3 households at any one time at any one residence. And absolutely no indoor gatherings at all. California. So if you were planning on eating around the dining room table and at, say, Thanksgiving or Christmas, you better order an all-weather turkey for your backyard dinner. Newsom's ban on gathering of more than 3 households means a family with more than 2 grown children can only have 2 visits at the same time. According to the Pew Research Center, almost 2/3 of mothers in their 40s in 1976 had 3 or more children. Those mothers are grandmothers now, with grown children, meaning up to 2/3 of families would be banned from bringing all their children under one roof for the holidays. This is satanic, folks. Come on. Can't you see this? Add this to the mask, separation. We talked about young... Go ahead.
I just added the word isolation.
Yeah, we talked about young children in school, how they're being affected by the mask, how it's affecting their personality, and what will they be like. I mean, it's bad enough that all they know is their cell phone. That's all they use, their cell phone. It's bad enough there. But now, the mask, and now in California, cancel Christmas, cancel Thanksgiving, or do it in sets. I'll have a third of the family on the day before, a third of the family the day of, and a third of the family after. Is that how we're going to do this? Really? If you're living in the Golden State, just plan on scratching the holidays and family gatherings. Unless you're willing to stand in line at a 6-foot distance, of course, and wait for a family opening. No cousins, no aunts, no uncles. Becca Helm from Sanger, California, and her family's gathering normally include 25 people. This year, she expects they can only have less than half of that. The holidays, you see, are all about family, says Helm. If you try to enforce every single one of these rules, the focus turns from family to keeping the rules. Ooh, boy. Think about that. Keeping the rules. Want to note that down, Mr. Anderson. That'd be a good title. What about details, you might ask? Good question. First of all, the state requires hosts to write down the names of all attendees for contract tracing reasons. Family members can leave and enter the house only to use the restroom. If the restroom is frequently sanitized, of course, whatever that means. If you live in condos or apartments, which is roughly half of California, nothing outdoors, folks. You're going to have to look elsewhere. Even outside, a mandated 6 foot of distance must be maintained at all times, including when the family members are at the table. Good luck passing that Thanksgiving turkey, right? Much less having a conversation. But wait, there's more. Governor Newsom's regulations require that any food or beverage at outdoor gatherings must be a single-serve disposable containers, and no serving your own plate. If food can't be served in a single portions, then someone wearing a mask covering, face covering, must be there to dole out servings. And of course, gatherings should be 2 hours or less. I agree, this is insane. Elect Biden and just see how much less of this you get.
He's the one who wants to mask everywhere.
That's right. National mask.
I don't think he'll stop there.
Of course not. Singing Christmas carols? Strongly discouraged.
What?
And if you do so, do it quietly. You must wear a face mask the entire time and keep an assured clear distance. Maybe they'll invent singing masks. If these rules weren't severe enough, the regulations also give local health jurisdictions permission to enforce even stricter rules. So how is this going to be enforced? Isn't that what good neighbors are for? Neighborhood news, right? I can tell you, if this is happening in my city, that'll be taken care of. That'll be taken care of. They be reporting.
Nazi neighbor.
Yep. How bad does it have to get, folks? By the way, who reversed their course again? Lockdowns as primary response to COVID-19 now said to be damaging. How is that possible? Well, let's look back over here. Oh, I see. They advised against lockdowns as a primary response to the COVID-19 pandemic after seeing the extent of damage they've caused. Dr. David Nabarro, the special convoy on COVID-19, told, this is from Spectator, that the organization does not advocate lockdown as the primary methods of control of the virus. He cited the economic, what makes the difference here, folks? I mean, honest to God, what makes the difference? Just submit. Just submit to the government. They know what's best for you. Look through history. See how much good they've done. Do you not see? No, you don't. This election should not even be close. And if the church and the family fathers were doing their job, it wouldn't be. But we've painted ourselves into a corner. Fathers can't tell their sons or daughters what to do and how to vote. They're independent. That's what the schools taught them. That's what the churches taught them. Where are the fathers? We're sitting on the couch or in our favorite easy chair, having our favorite adult beverage, watching the game while other folks are taking our children to soccer or football or whatever it is. We got to take care of ourselves, right, man? We got to take care of ourselves. Got to go golfing. We've got the church to teach them morals, right? Huh? And we've got the public schools to educate them. Tell me something. What more could you want? What more could you want? Families are the glue, folks, that hold all societies together. They just are. Nations that ignore them, discredit them, alter their natural structure, gay marriage. Look at the studies. Children need a biological father and a biological mother. Don't even look at the studies. Go to the prison systems. Ask them about their family life. Amen?
Exactly.
We don't have any kind of responses, Mr. Anderson, on our, I hope we're broadcasting. I hope we've been broadcasting. A little late now.
We are on YouTube. Yeah, we are. We're on
Okay.
several channels right now. We're on.
Cool. That's cool. Just keep the rules, folks. Just follow the rules. And pastors, you keep following the government because they know what's best for your church and they know what's best for your church members. You already know that there's certain things you can say and certain things you can't say. Otherwise, you're going to lose your 501c3 status, right? And you've got to have that. You've got to have that in order to keep the church running so you can have your own schools and you can teach your own children what the government tells you can teach those children, what the government mandates that you teach those children. That's why I like so much homeschooling. I'm sorry, that's why God likes homeschooling. He didn't give you those children so somebody else could educate them. Give me a break. He gave you those children. You are where they learn authority, responsibility. You're the one that's supposed to educate them, Mom and Dad. COVID-19 is an opportunity. So, yeah, use the fear then. If you're afraid to go to public school, then please, by all means, go for it. Hey, BJ Edwards along with Mr. Anderson. I know y'all love me. Thanks for listening in today. Go Bucks. Catch you later.
Who day?
Join us next week for Last Call with BJ Edwards.